So, students, today will be discussion paper on breathing and exchange of gases. So, first question, what you can see is you have to, there are two columns here, column 1 and column 2. In this, they have given the list of organisms, and here they have given the respiratory organs. So, you have to match it. So, earthworm will breathe through general body surface. So, A is 4. Okay. Then these aquatic arthropods. Aquatic arthropods will not use lungs, neither they use tubules, so they use gills. So B will be 3. Okay. Then mollusk. Mollusk will, if you see mollusk, they will use also gills if it is an aquatic mollusk called ctenidium. Okay, aquatic mollusk will breathe through ctenidium, which is a type of a gill present in the present in a mantle cavity, feather like gills. Whereas a terrestrial mollusk will depend on what you call the, similar to lungs, they have the pulmonary sac they have. Okay. So terrestrial animals, of course, require lung, and insect require network of tubules called trachea. So therefore, correct answer is the second one. Okay, next. An A in the pulmonary volume. So B is intrapulmonary pressure. Then this intrapulmonary pressure is less than that of the atmosphere. This part you have to consider. Okay. So here what they are telling is inside the lungs, the pressure is less than the atmosphere. That means what should occur is the air will always move from higher pressure to lower pressure. So intrapulmonary is less than atmospheric pressure means that the air is going to move from the atmosphere into the lungs. And this process is actually inspiration. This process is inspiration, which forces, okay, so when do intrapulmonary pressure becomes less is when the pulmonary volume, an increase in pulmonary volume and a decrease in intrapulmonary pressure, okay, to less than atmosphere, which forces the air from outside to inside into the lung, and the phenomena is called inspiration. So this is the second question. Okay, pick the correct statement. Contraction of internal intercostal muscle lifts up the rib and sternum. It will actually does the opposite. Okay, it will rather shrink the ribs as well as sternum and increase the intrapulmonary pressure. RBC transports oxygen only. RBC not only just transports oxygen, it will also transport CO2. Thoracic cavity is anatomically airtight chamber. That is true because if the thoracic chamber is not airtight, that probably might lead to the lung collapse. So therefore, because it is thoracic cavity is anatomically airtight, and also that there is a negative pressure inside the negative pressure in the pleural in the between the pleural membranes, that ensures the negative pressure breathing. So therefore, this is true. Next, during expiration, intrapulmonary pressure is slightly below than the, so in expiration, since the air moves from higher pressure to lower pressure, during expiration, what should happen is the air inside the lung, that is intrapulmonary air, should be high, whereas outside in the atmosphere it should be low, then only the air can pass from the lung to the atmosphere. So this one, correct answer is C. Next is, which one protects the lungs? So protection is prevention of any sort of collapse of the lung, you can tell. Which one protects the lung? All those components that are part of anatomically airtight, which are part of anatomically airtight thorax or thoracic cavity will have a protective role for the lungs, so that what is maintained is negative pressure breathing is maintained. So, excuse me. Which one protects the lungs? So the one that protects the lung is ribs that are more towards the lateral side of the thoracic region, vertebral column, dorsal, sternum above, that is like at the ventral part of the body. These are different directions, which ultimately is creating, and of course, a diaphragm at the lower end. Diaphragm at the lower end. All this will create an anatomically airtight chamber, and that itself is making the lungs to be functional. Okay. Here, column 1, they have given the parts of the respiratory system, and column 2, description about those respiratory system parts. Now, which are those? Say, column 1, here, larynx is there. Larynx is called voice box. So A is going to be 3. Then B, trachea. Trachea is called windpipe. Understand? So trachea is going to be called what? Windpipe. Got? That is B is 4. Okay, and A is 3 simultaneously. Now C. C is alveoli. They are present in air sac. Alveoli is present in air sac, and it is, of course, it itself is a miniature lung. Okay, epiglottis is lid of larynx. Okay, that means which would be correct? D is 1. D is 1, larynx 3, trachea 4, alveoli. So correct answer is A. Got? So regarding description. And sixth, in lungs, air is separated from venous blood. So what will come? So if this is the alveoli and this is the capillary that is moving by, this is the air present in alveoli, this is going to be the blood present in the capillaries. In between them, what structure is going to come? This one. 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layers are going to come. Mainly 3 layers are going to come. Okay. Which are those 3 layers? They are squamous epithelium, endothelium of blood vessels, and in between here comes the basement membrane. All together, it's called respiratory membrane or respiratory barrier. or diffusion barrier. Got? So out of all the three components are not given here. Out of three, two components are given. So you have to select those two. Squamous epithelium and tunica externa won't be there in the capillaries, will not be there in the tunica externa and all. They are the structure, outer layer present in the bigger arteries and veins. Squamous epithelium and endothelium of blood vessels. This is true. Transitional epithelium is not present in blood vessels, but instead it is present in urinary bladder. Columnar epithelium is not present in respiratory membrane itself. Flat cells, squamous cells are present. So therefore, this was sixth is what? B. What percentage of CO2 is present as carbonic acid? See, carbonic acid is formed when CO2 combines with H2 to give rise to carbonic acid. Carbonic acid further forms bicarbonate ion plus H plus. That is the proton H plus. That is hydrogen ion. Now this one is called carbonic acid. This one is called carbonic acid. Now this reaction occurs in how much percent? And what you should know, it occurs with the help of enzyme. It is an enzymatic conversion. So this is an enzymatic conversion. This whole reaction will be occurring in RBC. This whole reaction is going to occur in RBC. But in a plasma also some percentage will occur. So here they have not mentioned whether it is enzymatic or non-enzymatic. In plasma will be additional 3%, but that 73 is not there. So among the options you have to select. So correct answer is B. That is seventh question is B. At which level of thoracic vertebrae the trachea will divide? You all know that thoracic cavity or thoracic region on dorsal side has which column? It has vertebral column or the backbone. Vertebral column or backbone it has. Okay. So if you consider vertebral column has a reference, taking which column as a reference? Vertebral column for comparison or reference. In that case, a trachea which will begin with the sound box and it has a C-shaped cartilage and then it will bifurcate into two further air passages. They are called bronchus. So this is trachea and this is bronchus, and of course this will continue. Now what is being asked is the bifurcation, that is at this point it is dividing or bifurcating. This division, if you compare to the which side? Dorsal side component called vertebral column, at which level it is going to divide? Definitely, if it is a thoracic cavity, the vertebrae that are coming behind in the backbone, it will be thoracic vertebrae. It is from what? T1 to T12. Out of this series, this bifurcation occurs at T5. That is thoracic vertebrae number 5. Got? So that is about, therefore correct answer is the 5th thoracic vertebrae. Dash is the site of actual diffusion of O2 and CO2 between blood and atmospheric air. So answer will be this one, that is alveoli and their ducts. What does it mean? You'll know that I have given right from nasal cavity to the pharynx, to the larynx, to the trachea, to the bronchus, to bronchioles, to where? Terminal bronchioles. This whole region was called as which region? Conducting zone. This whole part was called as conducting zone. From terminal to which bronchioles are respiratory bronchioles. Respiratory bronchioles. Again continue alveolar duct, finally to alveolar sac, and finally to alveoli. This zone was called as respiratory zone. Now exchange can occur in which part? Respiratory zone. Out of this, maximum exchange is going to occur here. Maximum exchange is going to occur in alveoli because walls are very thin there. But very little exchange can occur in these bronchioles and the duct, like alveolar ducts. Further after this alveolar duct, air sac, and alveolar. So therefore, it is given as alveoli and their ducts means they refer to the ducts present in which zone? Respiratory zone. Okay. So therefore, correct answer will be which one? 4th one. Why not all bronchus? The walls are thin. In fact, they are made up of even other, they're not thin, they are also made up of a cross section can yield even smooth muscles and other components in tissue components in the tube. All bronchioles, no, because exchange will not occur in terminal bronchial. All bronchial and terminal bronchial, that means this whole thing will again come in conducting zone. So conducting zone, half of conducting zone, half in respiratory, so it cannot be taken answer. This is in the entire conducting zone. Diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscular structure which separates. Okay, so diaphragm is going to separate. That is an individual. Like if you see here, diaphragm, the cavity that comes here, this cavity, this is called thoracic cavity, and this cavity will be called as abdominal cavity. And who separates it is nothing but diaphragm. So diaphragm separates the thoracic cavity from abdominal cavity. So here thoracic cavity from abdominal cavity is answer. There is no separate membrane or the like phrenic muscle or like a diaphragm. There is no muscle that will separate the pelvic cavity with abdominal cavity. But pelvic cavity is nothing but the lower part of the abdominal cavity. Pelvic cavity is not directly besides near to the thoracic cavity. Coelomic cavity nothing but present in the abdominal cavity here, and even thoracic cavity is a coelom. I mean the body cavity, that is peritoneum and all. And here pelvic cavity again part of this cannot be there. These both are near to the abdominal cavity. Understand? So therefore 10th will be 3rd. On removing one of the 2 lungs in an individual, can a person survive? If one lung is there, person can survive. When one of the lung is removed through surgery, what happens is after recovery from the surgery, person can still survive because single lung can still supply the oxygen necessary for survival of an individual. That is called partial collapse of the lung. Not partial collapse, like only one lung is collapsed instead of two. But difficulty will come when both the lungs are collapsed, and then person cannot survive. It becomes an emergency condition. In fact, okay, so this are all things are only when both the lungs will collapse. 12th, during inspiration, what all occurs? Diaphragm. Inspiration means diaphragm contracts. What contracts? Diaphragm contracts. Okay. Diaphragm will contract. Second, diaphragm becomes flat. Diaphragm becomes flattens. Diaphragm will become flat. Then what happens due to this? Then external intercostal muscles contract. Ribs move up and forward. And finally, which volume is increased? Thoracic volume is increased. So among them, you should say diaphragm, external intercostal. Relax is not an answer here because inspiration is an active process. It should be through contraction. So therefore, here it should be through contraction. So correct answer will be, that is diaphragm and external intercostal muscle contract. Okay. Now 13th. 13th. Okay, the blood leaving the lungs. So consider that what happens is blood will leave the lung through various capillaries, which ultimately unite and form four pulmonary veins or two pairs of pulmonary veins, which are ending in left atrium. Okay, so tissue can absorb from, okay, let me see. The blood leaving the lungs has all its hemoglobin oxygenated. Now, if you consider an oxygenated blood is there and gives up oxygen to tissue, how does it? Because of what? What is the reason that it will give up? The tissue can absorb oxyhemoglobin. So physically, the tissue can't absorb oxyhemoglobin. Next, concentration in tissue is lower and concentration is higher as compared to concentration in tissue is higher and concentration is low. Oxyhemoglobin undergoes reduction. This reaction is not there. So first two are not the answer. So I think this question needs an further explanation. What is that is concentration of O2 in tissue is lower and concentration of CO2 in the tissue is higher compared to lungs. This will trigger which effect? Bohr's effect. And due to Bohr's effect, see whatever oxygen is bound to hemoglobin. So hemoglobin has how many chains? 4 chains. 1 chain, 2 chain, 3 chain, 4 chains. Now, when this condition will be there, what starts is Bohr's effect will start. Due to Bohr's effect, what happens? Oxygen will dissociate from hemoglobin. That means oxyhemoglobin is dissociated and what will be released? Free. The oxygen will be released and now it can diffuse into the tissues. Okay. So 13th, say now, say let's say it is 2B. Respiration involves following steps. Diffusion of gases O2 and C2 across alveolar membrane transport. Okay, there. What is being asked here is like you have to know the sequence in the steps in respiration. Only you should know steps in respiration sequence. Steps in respiration sequence. Okay. So first, what occurs? Pulmonary ventilation occurs. D. Then what occurs after that? Diffusion of pulmonary ventilation occurs. First D. Then what occurs is diffusion occurs. Then comes A. And after diffusion, there should be transport of gases. That is B. And E next. And next is C. This will be according to the respiratory steps which I have explained. 15th is pneumotaxic center can moderate, it's kind of a balance it is, moderate the function of respiratory rhythm. Okay, so balance it according to the needs of the body. That is what is the normal function of the pneumotaxic center of the pons. Okay, a reduction of duration of inspiration, yesterday I told it is correct. Okay, so what goes on due to the neurons of the DRG is a kind of inspirational ramp is going to occur. The stimulus that bring about inspiration, and that brings about contraction of the external intercostal muscles as well as diaphragm. That is stopped. That means its duration is reduced. So therefore it's correct. Increasing the duration of inspiration only. There is no increase here. Apneistic center will increase. First increase and then reducing the duration of. So it will does not have a role in control over expiration, because expiration is a passive process. Once the pneumotaxic center will inhibit the duration of inspiration, that is inspirational ramp of the DRG, that time what starts is the expiration starts. Increasing the duration of expiration only is wrong, because expiration basically is passive. Its primary role is stop the stimulus of inspiration, automatically indirectly leading to expiration, that is relaxation of phrenic muscles and external intercostal muscles. So therefore correct answer is going to be 15 is A. So 15 is going to be A. In the given box, values are given. These values are given in NCERT. So what values will be there? Like what are these values? This is all these values are partial pressure. Partial pressure of various components present. First, the respiratory gas. Various components means not all. The two main respiratory gases, that is O2 and CO2. Atmospheric air, the partial pressure is 1.5. These are values directly taken from NCERT. So, partial pressure of CO2 will be 0.3. So, answer will be 0.3. Now, alveoli is there. This is correct. Now, blood. That to which blood? Deoxygenated blood. Oxygen will be 40 here. So, therefore, 0.3 and 40. And here in the tissue, the contents will be similar to the deoxygenated blood. So, this 45 comes here. So, these two are similar. So, correct answer is first one. Understand? The next one, 17th. Every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood delivers approximately dash of CO2 to the alveoli. Okay. So every 100 ml of deoxygenated blood, which is approaching the alveoli, so 100 ml of blood or 1 dl of blood is there. How much it is going to deliver the CO2? Answer is direct answer. So it should be fourth. So correct answer is fourth. Then next one, ERV, that is expiratory reserve volume. See, expiratory reserve volume will come due to forcefulness is there first. Forceful expiration, expelling the air forcibly, that too after completion of expirational tidal volume, that is 500 ml. So that is called expirational reserve volume. Okay, IRV is this much, so ERV is going to be first one. Understand? So therefore direct values are there, from the NCERT values has to be taken. Which one has the lowest value? Among all of them, 2500 to 3000, vital capacity is still higher. This is 1000 to 1000. This will be the lowest. Why? Because the value, direct value comparison is there. It is the tidal volume. So tidal volume, this will be tidal volume plus ERV plus IRV. This is going to be inspiratory reserve volume. It has, and this is going to be expiratory reserve volume. So combination of all of these three will be the vital capacity. Air found in the air passage which does not participate in exchange of gas is called, it is a term we should know, which is called dead space volume. It is called as dead space volume. Vital capacity, you know, tidal volume, you know. What is residual volume? If a person breathes normally, 500 ml of air is going to come out, then he breathes forcibly, means it becomes ERV, and even after these two, something is still left behind, and that is residual volume, which will never be coming out of the lung, because that is very essential to maintain the structure of alveoli or prevent the collapse of alveoli. That means absolute no air cannot be created in the alveoli. So some air will always be left, even though there is more effort in trying to put out the air. So that is called as the residual. That's called as the residual volume. What is a dead space volume? Is that the, see, there are two zones, conducting zone and which zone? Respiratory zone. And here comes till which one? Terminal bronchiole, which I already explained in the previous. The terminal bronchiole actually comes under conducting zone, whereas the remaining ducts will come under respiratory zone. And here you know that the main ones is nothing but the alveoli that is exchanging. Okay, leaving the respiratory zone, if the air is present in conducting zone, suppose a person is breathing the air, how much ml of air goes in is 500 ml. In that, how much will actually exchange with alveoli is 350 ml. That means remaining 150 ml of air still is in where? It is in the conducting zone which is not getting exchanged. It is of no use. Okay, it's not getting exchanged. So that is called dead space volume. Then 21. The movement of chloride ion in chloride shift is where? See what I told is, as this RBC moves from tissue to where? Alveolar side, as it moves from tissue to alveolar side, what will be happening is, what is going to happen is, bicarbonate ions which are there inside the RBC. And this is what? This is nothing but the plasma. The bicarbonate moves from RBC to extracellular plasma. Now the negative ions become less. To balance and create an ionic balance, chloride ion will move in. Move in. Okay. Chloride ions are going to move in. This phenomena of, where this kind of exchange occurs, this is called as chloride shift. Main role is to maintain the ionic balance. Okay. If there is no ionic balance, there can be more acidity inside. Acidic conditions can exist inside the RBC and all. So therefore, this shift is there. Chloride shift is there. This shift reverses near alveolar side. That is called reverse chloride shift. So if you see this movement, chloride ion movement only is asked. It means chlorine is going to move outside, means which one? Plasma to inside RBC. From plasma inside RBC. From RBC will be wrong. WBC has no role at all. So, what's called, which question it is? 21st question. Correct answer is first one. Okay. Okay. Now, solubility of CO2 is how much times more fast? That will determine, solubility can determine diffusion capacity. Diffusion capacity. The CO2 is more soluble than oxygen. Means more quickly, and when it more quickly exchange can occur. For example, CO2 is more soluble here, so it can get exchanged very quickly. When quickly it gets exchanged, means large amount can get exchanged, even though the partial pressure difference is very less. So even though partial pressure difference is very less, it can undergo diffusion. Understand? So that is solubility of CO2 is how much times more? It is a direct value here. The direct value is, okay. So, but remember, the other two factors also are determining the diffusion or exchange. One factor was solubility of gases. Another factor is what? Thickness of respiratory membrane. Thickness of the respiratory membrane. And another factor will be what? Partial pressure. Lot of difference in the partial pressure, it drives the exchange. More thinner the respiratory membrane, it drives the exchange. More solubility of the gases is more, means it also drives the exchange, whereas others will be opposite. Partial pressure difference is less, then so exchange and diffusion can be less. If thickness is more, again diffusion is affected. And if solubility is less, that time also diffusion can get affected. Next is how many molecules can bind with single molecule of hemoglobin. Understand? So hemoglobin is having four chains. So hemoglobin has how many chains? Four chains. Protein, peptide chains it has, polypeptide chains. So two of them are named as alpha chain and another two of them are named as beta chain. Okay. And it has a non-protein part inside it. It is called porphyrin ring. At the center of it will be ion. And to that ion, oxygen is going to bind directly. So therefore, here will be the ion molecule. So here what will be there? Ion molecule is going to be present somewhere here. Okay, at the center. Okay. To that, uh, to this one, what is going to bind is oxygen is going to bind directly to the ion. Fe2 plus state, that is the oxidation state. So, four molecules of oxygen will bind it to each chain. Therefore, the whole thing can be written as what? Hemoglobin plus four molecules of O2 forms. Okay. And here, balancing is not so essential in biology, but it does make sense here. What it is? This is nothing but oxyhemoglobin. This is called oxyhemoglobin. So therefore, correct answer is fourth one. Correct answer is fourth one. Why carbon monoxide is poisonous for human? Because it causes carbon monoxide poisoning. That's all. It causes carbon monoxide poisoning. So if a person is enclosed in an area where carbon monoxide buildup is occurring, and now carbon monoxide concentration is more than oxygen, if you think, then that can be fatal. Why? Because carbon monoxide can bind to the hemoglobin more strongly than oxygen. It binds more strongly than oxygen. It means it has more affinity for hemoglobin than compared to the affinity of oxygen to hemoglobin. So what happens? Carbon monoxide can bind to, can react with hemoglobin and then form carboxyhemoglobin. So what is the, let me write the product here directly. So what forms is the product, this carbon monoxide is going to combine with hemoglobin and form what? Carboxyhemoglobin, not carbaminohemoglobin, carboxyhemoglobin. And this carboxyhemoglobin cannot be easily dissociated. It means now hemoglobin is not available. The hemoglobin get attached to carbon monoxide to form carboxyhemoglobin, and carbon monoxide will not easily detach from hemoglobin. As a result, what happens? All the hemoglobin will have bound, because concentration of hemoglobin, say in that particular enclosure is more, means even the blood of in that individual will have more carboxyhemoglobin. That means hemoglobin is now unable to bind to oxygen. So therefore, concentration of carboxyhemoglobin is more compared to the oxyhemoglobin. That means body is devoid of oxygen. When body is devoid of oxygen, then hypoxic condition followed by brain is not devoid of oxygen. When brain is devoid of oxygen, all the functions are going to cease. Okay, so therefore it is fatal and may cause death of an individual if the concentration is high and if there is no immediate measure taken. So affects the nerves, no. Diaphragm also, no. Okay. Hemoglobin combines with CO instead of, and that cannot easily dissociate, and therefore concentration of oxyhemoglobin is less. So hypoxic condition in the tissue, when there is a hypoxic condition, person cannot survive for longer time. So this is a 24th question. 24th question answer will be what? Fourth. Enzyme initially for uh, essential, sorry, enzyme essential for transport of CO2 as bicarbonate in the blood is what kind of enzymes? So which enzymes are involved in converting the CO2 as bicarbonates? So remember, first major way by which CO2 is transported is 70%. Is by how? Bicarbonate. And I have shown the reaction where CO2 combines with H2O, forms HCO3, which will form bicarbonate ion. This is called which ion? Bicarbonate ions. And this is called what? It is called carbonic acid. It's called as carbonic acid. This I told, it's enzymatic process, which is that enzyme carbonic anhydrase. This particular enzyme is a very high in concentration in RBC, very high in concentration in RBC, whereas extracellular it is negligible or as good as saying no. Okay, not there. Okay, so therefore 25th correct answer is going to be what is called carbonic anhydrase. And remember, here I have only written single direction. Only single direction will be near, say, tissue side, and it exactly becomes opposite direction near alveolar side. That means this is high in concentration in RBC and also catalyzes reversible reactions. Also catalyzes reversible reactions. Okay. So this is about the 25th question. Understood? So this explains what? About these all, about this enzymatic. Whereas if you see this in plasma, it will be non-enzymatic. It will be slow conversion. Fast conversion will be here. But in plasma, it is going to be slow as it is non-enzymatic. Understood? So these were, this was a which question? 24th question. 25th. Now 25th. Okay, 25th is third. That was 24th. Previous it was 26th. Which sensitive area is situated adjacent to a rhythm center, which is highly sensitive to O2 and is very highly sensitive to CO2 and hydrogen ions or H plus proton. So A is chemosensitive area. The location of them can either be in CNS or in aortic arc or near the carotid arteries. Carotid arteries. Understand? Chemosensitive area, this is the location of it. What they will do is they become sensitive to CO2. Body should not build up CO2. It is not good. Body should have lots of oxygen. Lots in sense, it should have sufficient oxygen for all the cells to work and do oxidation properly. Oxidation of food properly to get energy. But when CO2 buildup occurs, there should be some sensing system in our body that can sense that buildup of CO2 as well as H plus, because H plus builds up occur whenever CO2 is more, creating an acidic condition. That also is an indicator that oxygen is less. So these are indicators that oxygen is less, but these areas will not detect oxygen. They are going to detect CO2 and H plus. By this, indirectly, what is going to happen? Signal is sent that oxygen has become more, means what? Indirectly the O2 is has become very less. So as a result, what it is? Chemos it will be. It cannot detect. It is insignificant. So correct answer will be fourth. Okay. Next one, 26. Transport of CO2 by the blood is primarily dependent on what? So transport of CO2 primarily means very important, means what? 70% of it is transported as bicarbonates, and that require an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase. Understand? So solubility, the transport of CO2 by blood is primarily dependent not solubility. Diffusion is dependent on solubility. Presence of carbonic anhydrase, this is true. Presence of carbonic and ability of hemoglobin to bind and transport. Hemoglobin contributes compared to 70%. It also contributes, but lesser extent. Extent. Then ability to other blood, ability of other proteins. How blood proteins are not involved in transport of CO2. Okay. So correct answer therefore will be second. Next one. A graph is plotted between, so graph is going to be plotted between PO2 and then percent saturation. Percent saturation of what? Hemoglobin. When this graph is done, you are going to get which curve? S-shaped curve. That's why the term S-shaped means sigmoid. Sigmoid curve is obtained. What is the name of this curve? The name of this curve is oxygen dissociation curve. Is also called oxygen dissociation curve it is. Understand? So ODC curve. But here if it is not given, but what is given is it is a dissociation curve. So 28th correct answer is third one. Now 29th. Mark only occupational lung diseases. Occupational lung diseases, where these will come, due to occupation of a person or due to job of a person. Person does a job in particular factory where silica dust or asbestos fibers or coal dust and all are released, and when he works there for continuously, he is supposed to get this occupational respiratory disorder. So therefore, without precaution, if he is working, he or she working continuously in such type of industries, they tend to get the occupational respiratory disorder. First of all, lung damage occurs and fibrosis occurs. This fibrosis is seen as in the form of nodules, and they can block the air passages, because of which there can be difficulty in breathing. And it is a progressive disease, it cannot be easily reversible. So therefore, which of them are there? Not the pneumonia, the silicosis and asbestosis. So both correct answer is fourth one. Fourth one is correct answer. Major cause of emphysema. Remember, emphysema is caused due to smoke. Not necessary it should be a cigarette smoke. It is also mainly caused by which smoke? Cigarette smoke. It can be also be caused due to pollutions. So due to pollutions, various poisonous polluted smoke will be released, say by automobiles, factories or industries. Then that air builds up in the atmosphere, and a person again will continuously get exposure to it. Continuously means not on a very long run, even it should be a continuous exposure. In that case, he is going to suffer with emphysema. In emphysema, elasticity of the alveoli is lost. When elasticity is lost, it cannot recoil easily. When it cannot recoil easily, it keeps on swelling and swelling, and therefore residual volume is going to increase, and finally what happens, it will get burst. When it will burst, the alveoli has totally lost its function, and then a respiratory surface is decreased. And expiration becomes difficult because only recoiling is not easy here. So therefore, correct answer will be first one. So 31. The functional unit of lung and liver, two different organs. Lung is of course alveoli, and liver is cells cannot be the repeating unit, it should be hepatic lobule. So correct answer is fourth one, that is alveoli and hepatic lobules. These are structural and functional unit of lung as well as liver respectively. Select the incorrect statement from the following. Diffusion of O2 occurs from alveoli to tissues. Diffusion occur not from alveoli to tissue. This is wrong. From alveoli to the capillary. Okay. Diffusion of CO2 occurs from tissue to alveoli. Not directly. It should be through transport. So here they are not mentioning the transport here. One of the important steps in the respiration. Transport is not mentioned. Amount of CO2 diffused through the membrane is higher than that of oxygen. That is true. Here, what do they mean by membrane is, here they mean respiratory. Here what is the meaning is the respiratory membrane. Understand? In this, why? Because CO2 is highly soluble, 20 to 25 times highly soluble compared to oxygen, means its diffusion capacity is higher, and therefore correct answer is third one. Partial pressure of O2 is higher in pulmonary artery. No, pulmonary artery is, the partial pressure is around P40, whereas in pulmonary vein, it will be coming around even more than that, near to the, okay. So therefore correct answer will be the third one. Okay. So next, each lung is enclosed in double membrane called pleura. Membrane which closely covers the lung. The one that is near to the lung is visceral pleura. The one that is near to the thoracic wall, the inner lining of thoracic wall, is the parietal pleura. Vital capacity of a lung is equal to tidal volume. See, vital capacity is equal to tidal volume plus IRV plus ERV. Okay. And if you consider here, it is not there, first one. Another possibility is total lung capacity is equal to VC plus RV. In that case, VC is equal to total lung capacity minus the residual volume. So correct answer will be the second one. Okay. So last one, which of the following is a passive process? Expiration is a passive process.